Thank you, Mr. Gupta. A wonderful introduction. Last October, our company Third Horizon was retained by the APC on a joint operation together with the government of India to do a benchmark study. Last year was not a good year for the garment industry, and people wanted to know what happened, what are the underlying causes, and what possibly can be done to reverse the situation. In this regard, we spoke mostly to your customers, 30 of the largest garment importers in the world, at least the EU and the US, senior management, many of them are our clients, and we sent teams to 6 countries to visit factories in each country. Altogether, we visited maybe 155 factories. And then the last country I did myself, India. I'm going to give you some idea of the results of the report and where the industry is poised at the present time. The first problem I came across is that the title isn't really correct. The truth is that India has lost competitiveness consistently for the last 6 or 7 years. The second problem is that you really don't have an industry. You have a bunch of factories who don't talk to each other and certainly don't cooperate together. And without that cooperation, without that synergy, it's very difficult to find a solution. Let me give you an example. I was visiting factories, and they were pointing out that in many cases the factories buy fabric, gray goods, undyed goods, which they then give out to converters who dye, print, and finish the goods. The difficulty is that the converters do not really have the competence or the machinery or the reliability that's necessary. The difficulty is that the factories already purchased the gray goods. So when the finished goods comes in damaged, the factory is placed in a very difficult position. They don't really want to cancel and replace the goods because they'll be late on the order and have to fly it in. And so very often they'll figure maybe the customer won't catch them. So when I was talking to factories, I said, you know something, what we should have is the government should come in and build a converting plant. Does anybody in this room think that the Indian government is about to build a converting plant here? Same problems happened in Sri Lanka. There they had no industry and certainly no finishing, and they decided they wanted to do dyeing and finishing in Sri Lanka. 3 of the largest factories, competitors, got together, traveled to Hong Kong, and visited Fountainset, which is one of the world's largest and most competent finishers. And they went to Mr. Ha, the manager, and he said, you know, we want you to set up in Sri Lanka. We 3 factories will guarantee you 60% production, and we will each take 15% of the equity. Now you could imagine, as fast as Mr. Ha could reach for a pen, he was signing his name and moving to Sri Lanka. You could do the same here if you get a bunch of factories together to do the job. The problem you have in India started in 2005 with a quota phase-out. When the quota was phased out, after 10 years discussion, the big customers all looked at India as the next China. They all came to India. They opened offices all over the country. They started placing goods. Exports from India, market share from India rose 23% in 2005. And thereafter, the year-on-year trend declined every year until 2012, when you went into minus period. What happened? Customers came in. They knew that the Indian garment industry was not really that good, but they figured that given a little time, quota-free, free market, that the industry would improve. The reality is that the industry did not improve. The other industries improved, making India fall further and further behind. And slowly, the customers started not being that much interested, and finally they started pulling the orders out. And that's what's happened. This is a long-term situation. Our industry is unique because Our industry, customer relationships are based on here today, gone tomorrow. If you look at the records of the world's largest garment exporting countries in 2000 and compare them with 2012, you can get some really interesting things. First of all, in 2012, India was down here. The actual exports to the EU and the United States fell by about 21%. China fell a little bit. Remember, everybody was in a little bit of recession. The EU and the US together were showing something like a 7 or 8% decline in imports. If you look at the EU, in 2000, Tunisia was 4th, Morocco was 6th, Indonesia was 8th, Thailand was 9th. In 2012, minus 50%, minus 47%, minus 60%, minus 60%. India did pretty well from 2000 to 2012. You were up. The United States is more of a disaster. The largest supplier of garments in the United States in 2000 was Mexico, with a 14.7% market share. Today, it's dropped 67%. You don't get much worse than that. Actually, you do get much worse than that, because the Dominican Republic, which was number 3, dropped 80%. The Taiwanese and the Koreans are still major factors in the industry, but if you want to find a good Korean factory, Indonesia is a good place to go. El Salvador is a good. They don't make them in Asia, or they don't make them in Korea or Taiwan. This is the problem that we face. The decline of the industry has different causes for each country, but all of the losing countries share one factor in common. It's called living in denial. I was working in Mexico in 2001 or 2002, and Mexico was going through a difficult period. I was traced back what was happening to 1997 or something, and the government said, the government and the industry said, no, it's just the recession. We all start off in ignorance. I knew nothing about the Indian garment industry when I first came here. There are those people who will fight to retain ignorance. It's called living in denial. Last year was a terrible year. This year it's all over, and good times to hear again. An industry, a factory, is like a living organism. Pain is there to tell you you have a problem. It's nature's way of telling you you have a problem. Death is nature's way of telling you you didn't solve the problem. The problem that we have in India are systemic and structural. They're not going to go away on their own. You'll have some good years, some bad years, but I am telling you, I have some experience in this. 4 to 5 years from now, if we do not act to reverse the situation, India's market share in the United States and the EU will decline by 50%. As night passes, night follows day. This is the best I can tell you. What are the challenges? You go around to people here and you ask them, what are the big problems? Poor logistics. The roads are terrible. The ports are even worse. High labor rates. High cost of electricity. Greedy and rapacious customers. Where's that guy from Tesco? Let's kill him. These are the arguments you have? You know, it takes 9 to 12 hours to get from the factory to the port. You people have a lead time of 60 days. 9 to 12, it doesn't make any difference. High labor rates, high cost. Greedy customers go where they get the best deal, the lowest cost. Not necessarily the lowest FOB price, the lowest cost. High labor rates. These are the labor rates. Given the recent depreciation, the average labor rate, people in this room, is between $130 and $155 a month, which makes you slightly more expensive than Cambodia. Much more than Bangladesh, but you're less expensive than Indonesia, Vietnam, China, Turkey. And your 16% average annual increase in wages is the lowest by far in Asia, including Turkey. And if you look at your FOB prices, your FOB prices are such that India ranks 5th of the 7 largest garment exporting countries. You're underpaying the workers, And you're overcharging the customers, and the man's getting upset. He says, I'm not getting value for money. Electricity. The average electric charge here is 10.7 cents per kilowatt hour. It's not bad. It's more expensive than Vietnam, more expensive than Bangladesh, or maybe about the same, but it's lower than other countries. The rate for industrial electricity in Germany is 8 euro cents. 8 euro cents is about 10.4 cents. You're only slightly more expensive than Germany. The problem is not the cost of electricity. The problem is you don't have any electricity. And the same people, you have a legitimate complaint. If it's costing you 10 cents or 11 cents a kilowatt hour, as soon as you turn in your generator, it's costing you 22 or 33 cents. Do you know that the average cost of electricity that we've been able to determine is 2.5 to 3.5% of FOB? You don't know it? People in this room, you're lucky if you can net 4.5 to 5% at the end of the year after all expenses. And you're paying 3.5% for electricity. So what are you going to do about it? All those in favor of going to the government and asking for help and expecting help, raise your hands. All right, there it is. All those throwing up your hands saying you can't do anything? If a large factory is spending $40,000 US a month on electricity, $480,000 a year, means that if you can cut your electric costs by 50%, you can spend $2 million. For $2 million, you could produce enough electricity, sustainable electricity, to sell it back to the grid. The solution is in your hands. There are companies in the world whose job it is to come into your factory and tell you how to cut your electrical consumption by 50%. India is the world's third largest garment producing country. You're the greatest market on earth. Why aren't they coming here? Why aren't you calling these people? Why aren't you going to your customers and saying, Marks and Spencer, we have a problem with electricity. Do you know somebody you can recommend? They'll give you a list of 5 names. They want you to reduce your electric power costs. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we taking advantage of who we are and getting together and getting the right people in to help us? It's an investment. The real challenges. We looked at the factories, people we visited in 7 countries, and we asked them to rate their country high, medium, low. A high got a score of 4, meant that this was a good reason for being in this country. A medium got a score of 2, which means it's okay, we're happy to be here, but they could do better. And a low got a score of -2. This is a good reason for leaving the country. We look at this, and we look at compliance, sustainability, pollution. You rank 5th, 7th, and 6th. Somebody asked the question, why doesn't Tesco trust us to be compliant? They trust you, they don't trust you to begin with, because you aren't in compliance. How many people here get their employees through companies that simply supply them? Okay? They're not your employees. Somebody comes in and gives you employees. How many people, everybody. How many people here work with subcontracting factories that you know would never pass compliance in a million years? How many people in this room follow the legal requirement to have 50 days overtime per quarter, 4 hours a week? Is there anybody in this room? Nobody's in compliance. And you're asking why are they going into check? The truth is, and this is an area of compliance, is that the legal standards of compliance in the country are bad. They're poor. Everybody knows this. What they don't quite understand is that it's almost impossible to change social legislation. It is a killer. The only way of overcoming it is to find a standard, an industry standard you can live with. And then you fight with the government. And you're doing that anyway. Sustainability. There are signs out there talking about new fabric finishes, sustainable dyeing. This is an area of tremendous value to the country. My God, we just talked about electricity. What's more sustainable than reducing your reliance on electricity? Pollution, you're head of Bangladesh. Productivity. India has the lowest rate of productivity of any of the Asian countries. Worker attrition, 10.4 to 12.4%. It means you're losing 100% of your workers every year. That average. Productivity and worker attrition are related. If you want to raise productivity, you have to train workers. I can train a sewer to sew a t-shirt, 6 weeks. A multitask sewer would require 12, 14 months. Setting up lean manufacturing in my operation, 3 years. A lot of money. One of the things I discovered, and this is, I'm not criticizing anybody, but one of the things I discovered is that many factories here are investing large sums of money in lean manufacturing. But the results are they're shipping, the best they can do is lead times of 30 days after receipt of fabric. Lean manufacturing is you can ship goods in 5 days. Hugo Boss has a factory in Izmir in Turkey that ships a €1,000 jacket in 6 days. The factory was designed by an automotive engineer. It's a great factory. They're producing a quality product. After visiting so many factories and hearing the same story, I finally was talking to one of the factory owners, and I said, okay, who is your biggest customer? And his biggest customer was Philip Van Heusen. And I called the head of sourcing in Philip Van Heusen, and I said, can you give me the name of a legitimate person who can do lean manufacturing? And 2 days later, he came back and said, MAS Lanka has an operation in India. They do very good operation. These are the people. You can do the same. Go to your customer. I need somebody to do lean manufacturing. I need somebody to move ahead. Lead times. The lead times here are, I'm talking about lead time from after receipt of fabric. I'm not even talking about the fabric problem. It's 60 days. It's crazy. Bank interest. It's a real killer. It's one of those things, when we do our recommendations to government, to change the situation, it's an area that has to be discussed. A garment factory is a low profit, high volume, zero risk business. If you ship the goods, decent goods on time, you're supposed to get paid. Having additional charge for interest, having additional charges for electricity, that's the real killer. You should be putting the money into better quality, better QA, finding the problem before you even go into production. It's a challenge from the customer's point of view. Compliance, 6th. Sustainability, 6th. Pollution, 6th. Productivity, 7th. Customer service, 5th. Lead time, 7th. Price, 7th. Quality, 7th. Ease of doing business, 7th. And reliability, 7th. This is what the customers are telling me. And I work for these people. They're not going to fool me. This is where you are. There are reasons for it. Some of the reasons are you better change. A lot of the reasons are beyond your control. This really becomes a problem. Ease of doing business is a cultural problem. The major customers today no longer deal with orders. They deal on programs. Now, this factory is getting 60,000 garments a month. We don't know. What's 60,000? They're getting 60,000 garments a month. And they negotiate prices today very simply. They know the cost of the fabric better than you do because they negotiated the price of the fabric and they designated the mill. They know the price of the trim because they've designated the trim supplier. They know how many minutes it should take to produce the garment, even allowing for problems in India. They have engineers who know this. So what are you going to argue about? You're going to argue about the number of cents you're going to be paid per standard minute. So they don't have to negotiate the price of every style. They negotiate the price for the season. That's it. Garments, it's all the same. That's what we're paying you. That's what it boils down to. That's what they're fighting for. The problem is, once that takes place, once that finishes, the head of sourcing is no longer involved. You have a hierarchy. there's some guy who sits in either UK or sits in Hong Kong, and he sources $4 billion a year. And then there are regional sections. There's a guy for South Asia, and he's in charge of that region. Then you have a country thing, and then maybe you have little branches all over the place. Once we understand the program, there's a merchandiser here in New Delhi that's negotiating with you, a very junior person. And they're negotiating with the merchandiser who's a very junior person. But everything has really been negotiated. All they're talking about is making sure the goods are shipped on time, making sure the quality is right, all the minor details. In India, if a problem occurs, like the price is not the right price, the boss gets involved. Suddenly, you have the boss. And who is the boss? He owns 2,000 machines. He holds an important position in the local political party. And maybe he's treasurer of the country club. The merchandiser can't talk to him. She's nobody. He's really important. So she kicks it upstairs to the local manager, who doesn't want any part of it. He kicks it upstairs to the regional manager. Now a strange thing has happened. The owner of the local factory, he thinks, well, this is his due. He's a really important person, and he should be dealing with really important people. But once you get to the regional level, once you get to the who is this guy with 2,000 machines, and why are we doing business with him? He's causing me problems. He's not shipping his goods. In another country, another place, if there's a problem about price, if there's a problem to negotiate, you instruct the merchandiser, accept the price. The boss doesn't talk to the other merchandiser. The merchandiser talks to the merchant. Accept the price, produce the goods. You accept the price, you produce the goods, you ship the goods on time. You send a note to the head of the regional office. You didn't calculate correctly, but I don't want to stop the program. We ship, you owe me. The regional manager receiving this letter, this email, this is a really good guy. This is a factory you want to deal with. He understands the priority. He understands ship the right garment on time and forget about the price. And he comes back and he'll get a letter. You might get a letter from the head of sourcing in the UK for this. And the guy is saying, a mistake was made. We're going to rectify it. Your quota of 60,000 units is now 90,000 units. What the hell? You're buying $4 billion worth a year? You can do anything you want. You are a reliable supplier. The final analysis, to be in business, is to be a reliable supplier. To be the person who doesn't cause trouble, to be the person where trouble occurs, they go to find a solution. This factory let me down. Let me go to this guy, Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta always helps us out. There's a relationship. The relationship is everything. If you have ease of doing business, that relationship isn't there. Reliability. Reliability is simply that they can count on you. It's about quality. Good factories ship good goods, but the problem is if you buy fabric and the fabric is late or the finishers louse up the fabric, you're stuck with bad goods, you're running out of time, you ship the goods. What the hell? You don't have a choice. And you become unreliable. Reliability is everything. Reliability is going to the customer the day the problem occurs and saying, I don't know what to tell you, this is our problem. The customer's not going to throw you out. The worst thing that happens is on the day of shipment, the customer hears the bad news. If the customer hears the bad news 3 weeks in advance, there's something to be said. There's something to be salvaged. They want to keep the relationship. This is a message to change, and much of the change is in your hands.
Sorry to interrupt you, David.
How much time?
You've got precisely 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to do this very quickly. You have one great advantage. You are the best place on this planet for product development. Seriously, if you look at your scores on product development, you're up there in the 90s. There's nobody who competes with you. This is what the other factories are saying. As far as the customers are concerned, you're doing a pretty good job there. The problem is you're great on product development. You can actually take the sketch that the designer sends you and come up with a workable finished sample. You just can't make the goods. The way forward, product, customer, find the product. If you are making T-shirts, well, think for a second, and maybe you realize that the machine that will produce a 24-inch garment will also produce a 44-inch garment. You call them dresses. Dresses are more profitable. If you're making cotton T-shirts or cotton dresses, try for synthetics. There's a big gap between synthetic and cotton. Go to the customer. If you can't import the goods, go to a customer who's in the other season. Go to Brazil. Go to Colombia. Go to the places to balance your production and to provide the service. This is the, okay, 1 minute. This is the real problem.
That's not me doing it.
Okay. This is the real problem. The world operates with a spring season. This is shipment arrival in January and arrival for fall in May, June, July, August, September. You don't have a fall season. This is you. You have 6.5 months of steady production. How the hell can you make a profit on 6.5 months of steady production? Unless you fire your workers and hope they'll come back. The rest of the world is operating on 9 months. You cannot operate 6.5 months. I mean, a first-year graduate will tell you this. This is the solution. This is the big problem that we have to cope with. This is what we were hired to do, to find a solution to this problem. Because you can't find one, and you desperately need one. That's it.